They say when you die, your memories fade like morning mist. They say the river between lives washes everything clean. But nobody tells you what happens when you die with rage so hot it burns through the veil itself. My name was Kim Joon-hyuk. I had a kingdom. I had a family. I had a woman who looked at me like I hung the moon. And in one night of blood and betrayal, I lost it all. My best friend put a sword through my heart. My brother smiled while my castle burned. My fiancé watched me crawl in the dirt and beg for death. I died screaming, cursing, promising the gods themselves that I would return. And then, I opened my eyes. I was 12 years old. 10 years before the fall. Everything was ahead of me. Everything was still mine to lose. But here's the thing nobody expects. I remembered everything. Every sword stroke. Every poisoned word. Every face that smiled while I died. And now I have 10 years to prepare for the night that killed me. Welcome to my second life. I hope you're ready for blood. The first thing Joon-hyuk noticed was the smell. Not smoke. Not blood. Jasmine. His mother's jasmine tea, steeping in the morning sun. He was 12 again, sitting in the garden of House Kim, the most powerful martial clan in the Joseon-era kingdom of Hwarong. His small hands trembled, not from fear, from rage. 10 years of memory crashed into a child's body like a tsunami against a shore. He remembered the weight of a crown, the feel of a blade sliding between ribs, the sound of his fiancée, Lady Seo Yeon, laughing while his blood watered the palace stones. Young master, a servant approached. Your sword lessons. I'll attend, Joon-hyuk said, his voice too steady for a boy. The servant blinked. In his first life, he'd skipped lessons, preferring poetry and wine. Not this time. In the training yard, he found his brother, Min-hyuk, practicing forms. 16, handsome, beloved by all. The same brother who would hold him down while traitors stripped his title. Joon-hyuk's grip tightened on his wooden practice sword. Little brother, Min-hyuk grinned. Come to finally learn something useful. Joon-hyuk struck, not a child's blow, a killing stroke from a man who'd survived 100 battles. The wooden sword cracked against Min-hyuk's collarbone with surgical precision. His brother stumbled, eyes wide with pain and shock. Joon-hyuk, what? I know what you are, Joon-hyuk whispered, too quiet for others to hear. I know what you'll become. And I'm going to break you before you ever get the chance. That night, Joon-hyuk sat in his room, mapping the future. He knew the dates, the alliances, the moment his best friend, Park Dae-sung, would first test his loyalty and find it wanting. He knew the secret weakness of every enemy who'd celebrate his death. But knowledge wasn't enough. A 12-year-old couldn't challenge the kingdom's power players. He needed to become someone else entirely. In his first life, he'd been the gentle scholar prince, trusting and soft. That boy had died screaming. The thing wearing his face now was something harder. Something forged in betrayal and sent back with a single purpose. He opened his window and looked at the moon. 10 years. 3,653 days until the night of blood. I'll be ready, he promised the darkness. Every one of you will beg for the death you gave me. And I'll remember every face while I watch you fall. By 15, Joon-hyuk had become a ghost in his own life. Where the old Joon-hyuk had been warm and open, this version was cold, calculating, terrifyingly precise. He trained until his hands bled, then trained more. He studied poison, politics, the dark arts of manipulation that his gentle former self had never touched. His father, the clan lord, watched him with growing unease. You've changed, my son. I've grown up, Joon-hyuk replied. But inside, he laughed. Grown up. He was a dead man haunting his own childhood. At 16, he made his first move. He knew that in 2 years, a northern warlord would offer an alliance that would ultimately betray House Kim. This time, Joon-hyuk reached the warlord first, not as an ally, but as an enemy he destroyed before the threat could bloom. It cost him 3 assassins and a fortune in bribes. When the warlord's severed head arrived in a box, Joon-hyuk felt nothing. In his first life, he'd vomited at his first kill. Now he measured progress in bodies and prevented betrayals. His brother Min-hyuk grew increasingly wary. The friendly warmth between them had curdled into something poisonous. What happened to you? Min-hyuk demanded one night. You used to be human. I died, Joon-hyuk said simply. And something else came back. At 18, he encountered Park Dae-sung for the first time in this timeline. His former best friend, the man who would drive the sword through his heart. Dae-sung was everything Joon-hyuk remembered, charming, loyal seeming, deadly behind the smile. Joon-hyuk, I heard so much about you, Dae-sung greeted him at the royal tournament. They say you're the kingdom's rising star. They say many things, Joon-hyuk replied, gripping his sword until his knuckles whitened. He could kill him now. One stroke, prevent everything, but that would be mercy. And Joon-hyuk was long past mercy. Instead, he smiled. Let's be friends, Dae-sung. Close friends. I'll tell you all my secrets. He spent the next 2 years feeding Dae-sung false information, poisoning his reputation with subtle whispers, setting him up for a fall so catastrophic that when the betrayal finally came, if it came, Dae-sung would find himself isolated, ruined, and utterly alone. Lady Seo-yeon appeared at 20, just as beautiful, just as treacherous. In his first life, Joon-hyuk had loved her with his whole soul. Now, looking into her perfect face, he felt only the memory of a blade. My lord Joon-hyuk, she curtsied, eyelashes fluttering. I've dreamed of meeting you. The nightmare is mutual, he murmured, too quietly for her to hear. Then louder. The pleasure is all mine, my lady. I have such plans for us. She smiled, thinking she'd hooked a prince. She didn't realize she'd caught a shark. The night arrived exactly as remembered. The autumn moon, the palace festival, the poison in the wine. Though this time, Joon-hyuk swapped the cups. The assassins in the shadows. Though this time, they found his blades waiting. He stood in the palace gardens where he'd died screaming, now 22 and utterly transformed. Behind him came the sounds of chaos. His brother Min-hyuk, clutching his stomach where the poison worked its way through his system. Park Dae-sung, surrounded by guards who'd been paid with his own money. Lady Seo-yeon, her beautiful face pale with realization. You knew, she whispered as Joon-hyuk approached. You knew everything. I died on this ground once, he said, drawing his sword. The same sword, he realized with dark irony, that Dae-sung had used to kill him. He'd taken it from Dae-sung's house that morning. I remember every moment, every face, every lie you told while I bled out. Joon-hyuk, please, Min-hyuk gasped. I'm your brother. You held my arms while they cut me, Joon-hyuk said calmly. You smiled when I begged. Don't speak to me of brotherhood. Dae-sung tried to fight, but Joon-hyuk had spent 10 years learning exactly how he moved, how he breathed, where he was weak. The fight lasted seconds. When Dae-sung knelt, disarmed and bleeding, Joon-hyuk pressed the sword, their sword, against his throat. Do you know what hell is, Dae-sung? He asked softly. It's remembering. Every day, every night. For 10 years, I've relived your betrayal. And now I finally get to make new memories. He didn't kill him. Not immediately. That would be too kind. Instead, he destroyed everything Dae-sung loved. His reputation, his alliances, his very name, while the man watched, helpless and ruined. Lady Seo-yeon tried to run. Joon-hyuk caught her wrist, feeling nothing but the ghost of old pain. You asked me once if I loved you, he said. In my last breath, I did. Now you're just another face in my nightmare. He didn't kill her either. He let her live with the knowledge that she'd chosen the wrong man, that her schemes had collapsed, that the gentle prince she'd betrayed had become her darkest fear made flesh. When dawn broke over the palace, Joon-hyuk stood alone among the ruins of a conspiracy that had never been allowed to bloom. The king approached cautiously, this young man who'd somehow known every traitor's move before they made it. How did you know? The king asked. Joon-hyuk looked at the blood on his hands. At the sword that had killed him once. At a future that was finally, mercifully, different. Because, he said, I've seen how this story ends. And I refused to die the same way twice. 3 years later, Joon-hyuk sat in a tea house, watching snow fall over the capital. He was 25, technically alive longer than his first life had allowed. The kingdom had changed. The king trusted him implicitly. House Kim stood unchallenged, his brother exiled, his enemies destroyed or imprisoned. He should have felt satisfied. Instead, he felt hollow. Revenge, he discovered, was a fire that consumed everything, including the man who lit it. In destroying his betrayers, he'd become something as ruthless as they'd been. The gentle poet prince was truly dead. What remained was efficient, powerful, and terribly alone. A woman entered the tea house. Not Seo Yeon, not anyone from his past. She was a physician, he'd heard, who treated the poor in the outer districts. Her name was Hannah, and she looked at him with no recognition, no agenda, no memory of his blood on palace stones. "You look like a man haunted by ghosts," she said, sitting across from him without invitation. "I am the ghost," Joon-hyuk replied, and told her everything. It poured out of him. The 2 lives, the betrayal, the rage that had carried him through childhood into this empty victory. He expected horror, expected her to flee from the monster he'd revealed. Instead, she took his hand. "Then who are you?" she asked, "when you're not being someone's revenge?" The question broke something in him. For 10 years, he'd been the boy who remembered dying. The weapon forged in betrayal. He'd never stopped to ask what came after the blood was washed away. He began to change, slowly, painfully. He used his power to reform the laws that had allowed such corruption. He built schools where he'd once planned assassinations. He learned to laugh again. Not the cold laugh of vengeance, but something genuine, rusty with disuse. Hannah taught him that memory could be a prison or a foundation. That remembering his death didn't mean he had to keep dying. On the 10th anniversary of his rebirth, Joon-hyuk returned to the palace garden. The jasmine grew wild now, untended. He knelt in the dirt where he'd bled out, where he'd later stood victorious, and finally let himself weep. Not for the betrayal, not for the revenge, for the boy who'd died trusting too easily, for the man who'd lived hating too completely, for the person he was trying to become, someone who could carry both memories without being destroyed by either. "I remember everything," he whispered to the jasmine. "And I choose to live anyway." At 30, Joon-hyuk became the kingdom's greatest protector, not its feared revenant. The sword that had killed him became a symbol of justice, displayed in the royal hall as proof that even the darkest betrayals could be transformed. He married Hannah in a simple ceremony. No political alliance, no hidden daggers, just 2 people choosing each other in the light. When she took his hands during the vows, he felt no ghost of old pain, only new hope, fragile and real. But stories like his don't end cleanly. On his wedding night, a messenger arrived. Min-hyuk, his exiled brother, had gathered an army in the northern wastes. Dae-sung, somehow escaped from prison, rode at his side. Seo Yeon, ruined but unbroken, had sold her beauty to warlords for soldiers. They were coming, not for the kingdom, for him. Joon-hyuk stood on the palace walls, watching dust rise on the horizon. Hannah joined him, silent and steady. "I could end this," he said. "I know their moves before they make them. I could destroy them again." "Or," she asked, "or I could try something I never considered in my first life." He turned to face her. Mercy. The battle, when it came, was brief. Not because Joon-hyuk outmaneuvered them, though he could have, but because he met them with something they never expected: forgiveness, offered from a position of absolute strength. Min-hyuk, broken and aged beyond his years, fell to his knees. "Why? After everything I did, because I died hating you," Joon-hyuk said, helping his brother stand. "And I refuse to live the same way. The boy you betrayed is gone. The man I am now chooses differently." Dae-sung wept. Seo Yeon turned away, unable to bear the grace she'd never shown. They were imprisoned, yes, but treated with dignity. Given chances to change that Joon-hyuk had never received. Years later, when Joon-hyuk was old and gray, children would come to hear the legend. The prince who died and came back. The man who remembered everything and chose forgiveness anyway. Did it really happen? They'd ask. He'd smile, looking at Hannah, at his children, at a kingdom healed by the same hands that once planned destruction. Every word, he'd say, and the memory of it keeps me warm every night. For in the end, the greatest revenge wasn't destruction. It was becoming someone who no longer needed it. The boy who'd died screaming had finally, truly, found peace. And the jasmine still bloomed, year after year, remembering nothing but the sun. They say the gods only give second chances to those who need them most. Kim Joon-hyuk needed 10 years of rage to learn what he couldn't in one lifetime of innocence, that the strongest steel is forged in fire, but it's love that keeps it from rusting. If you're carrying your own betrayals, your own memories that cut like blades, remember this: you don't have to be defined by what broke you. You can be defined by what you chose to build from the pieces. This has been The Sword That Remembered. Like and subscribe for more stories that haunt the spaces between life and death. And if you had a second chance, what would you remember? What would you choose to forget? Until next time, keep your memories close, but your hope closer.